Welcome back to Specially Speaking. We are your hosts, Liz and
Andrea.
today we are going to explore real conversations around education, change, and advocacy. But the most important topic, I think, for me is today's topic on the episode of teacher burnout. And we're going to talk about something that's deeply personal to many educators, burnout and the decision to pursue a new path after education.
And as you probably can see, for the first time in Specially Speaking history, we actually have two very special guests joining us today. I'm going to let both of you guys kind of introduce yourselves to our lovely listeners out there, and talk about a little bit about you and where you're like your career and where you're at right now before we dive into everything more deeply.
Hello, my name is Chris. I have about a year and a half experience starting with as a high school English teacher. I'm at the 11th and 12th grade levels, and I went back to school, so I'm a full-time graduate student right now at Teachers College at Columbia University. And I'm kind of just entering into my teaching career right now. I hope to kind of pick back up. I was in New Jersey, now I'm in New York. It's the beginning of a lifelong teaching career. So that is where I am currently at.
My name is Brian Thomas. I've been in education for about 12 years of my career. Started in 2012 as a college counselor, then started working in school-based operations, did that for 8 years, and then worked on a network team doing network-based operations for a small charter school network as well. So I've seen a lot of the gamut from like working directly with kids, working behind the scenes in operations, and then working even further behind the scenes at like a 6,000 foot level. Right now, I'm actually in a professional transition and trying to figure out what it is that I want to do next. And I'm actually giving some thought to returning to education. So, very exciting time for me as I just figure out what is going to be the place that makes me feel alive in the work that I do, and that the work that I do has an impact on the world at large. So, it's me.
And I think we have a very unique perspective because we have somebody in the beginning of their journey with education and somebody who's a veteran. I would consider Brian a veteran in education. I think after 3 years, we can call ourselves
Oh, yeah.
veterans.
Appreciate it. I'll take it.
I mean, yeah, right. The exhaustion, the ongoing research, the support that you always provide students and staff, no matter what position you're in, that in itself makes you a 3-year veteran.
Yeah. You know what I think
Boy.
is also kind of interesting? So Liz and I got to see Chris at the start of his educational journey, but Brian actually got to see me at the start of mine, like almost 10 years ago when I first started working in Brooklyn. So Brian saw me as a literal, like, fresh out of grad school, like baby fledgling teacher. And like, so it's really great to kind of like be able to have everybody on this call because we've kind of seen the growth, like for everybody,
Mhm.
really over the course of our educational careers, which is awesome.
And I think what I love about education the most is it allows the opportunity for you to discover different areas within education that you can focus on. So if you have a specialty in reading intervention or math intervention, that can be your main focus. But I really want to talk to you guys about walking us through your personal journey and when did you start to feel the need for change. So Chris, I know that you are in the beginning of your career, did you already start to feel that shift? And if you did that really encourage you to go back to school and really hone in on a particular area of education?
Absolutely. And what's actually really interesting about that is that I didn't study education in my undergraduate. So when I entered into teaching, I'm not even sure I knew immediately that that's what I was signing up for just because of the nature of the role. But then ultimately, I was a full-time classroom teacher. But just because of that environment, it was a little bit of a deprofessionalized environment. I wanted the experience, I wanted the expertise to be able to provide a higher impact education. So I myself wanted the professional credentialing before I stepped back into a classroom. I didn't feel like I was performing necessarily to the best of my ability because I didn't have that background in education. I always felt like I was behind. I was trying to pick it up. So, it's kind of just that interplay that's happening right now in education, this professionalization, this careerization of education.
Let me ask you a question. In your beginning stages, what I hear is, the environment was new for you. So there was a lack of knowledge with classroom management and the preparation in itself is a lot. Did you feel that you were supported as a new teacher coming into an element where it was just fresh and a new experience for you? Were you supported by either veteran teachers and or your administration?
In a lot of ways, yes, and in other ways, no. There was a really strong push for mentorship. So that was definitely, that was one to one. That was not a mystery. That was not confused. There was definitely a hierarchy to speak to. There was definitely a list of people I could go to. But, since I guess the early 2000s, and I can't really speak to that from experience, just what I've read about, is, this push towards standardization and accountability, not only for students, but for teachers. I, as a teacher, have to be assessed by my students' performance on standardized testing. So, as much as there was mentorship in a very strict lens, there's also this push for accountability. And that has definitely been something that I don't think is historic to education, but that's definitely something I am navigating, especially as someone with no educational background in education.
Mm.
I have
Yeah.
to navigate accountability and mentorship, which, positive and negative, but
Yeah. And
complicated.
did that immediately put a burden on you? Exhaustion, anxiety, stress? What kind of those feelings or what was inside of you that felt like, oh, this might not be the place for me? Not the career choice, but the environment.
See, you love the field,
Mhm.
but sometimes it's like the hammer coming down on you a bit. And you can't even necessarily blame the institution for that. Sometimes I tend to. But when these institutions, different types of schools, public schools, private schools, charter schools, they're now in this environment of competition. They have to constantly prove themselves, and teachers have to have this quantifiable measure of success. Yeah, I do feel anxiety. And sometimes it's not even we're in this boat together. Sometimes it can feel like you are personally responsible. And nowadays I feel like teachers are being asked to solve poverty in a lot of ways. It's not even that schools are working with the communities they're in, but it's teachers are now, in a lot of ways, I feel, look to, especially nowadays with the current political system, teachers are being looked to as the unique solvers of poverty in a lot of ways. It is what are you personally doing to solve the communities you're in? Whatever community you're in, you are personally responsible for that. So
Yeah.
there's a lot of anxiety. It's, these mentors sometimes look to you as people they can drop the hammer down onto. Where's the accountability? Where's the data?
Right. Passing the buck, really. I mean, that happens a lot. Brian, I'm interested to hear about your journey since you've been in the education world for a good period of time.
Yeah,
What's your journey? What's your
for
story?
sure. I mean, even in hearing Chris talk, it kind of took me back to like where my journey started. Because similar beginning, like my academic background was not in education. I got my degree in psychology and Africana studies, and ultimately ended up becoming a college counselor very much off of a conversation had with a friend one night at a bar about like trying to find a job in New York City, right? And as much as it was a happenstance, I also feel like I've been living this phrase of divine alignment for quite some time, the last few months of just feeling like you are, for the most part, where you're supposed to be at the right time, and certain things are supposed to be aligning for you to be doing what you're supposed to be doing. And so, as much as I didn't like forecast being in education for over a decade, I think it was exactly where I was supposed to be. And I think that conversation kicked that off. Reflect on my first environment education. Chris, similar to you, felt like I came in like not knowing what to do, not feeling like I had the skill set, the I don't want to say the intellect because I think I am smart as a person. I think I've always thought of myself as a smart person, but I didn't have the book smarts for this role. And I felt like because of the work that I was doing and the impact that it had on kids and families real time, I felt like I was doing them a disservice. Need to go get my skills up because if I am doing this like off of my gut and finding some success, that's awesome. But like, what are all the ways in which I'm not meeting the bar for myself and for my kids? And so I decided to then move into looking for roles. Like I didn't think going back to school was going to do it for me. I couldn't do it. I was like, nah, no, not it. Not taking no standardized tests. I'm all right. But I wanted to find roles that would help me build my professional skill set while still being in education so that I could get the knowledge while getting paid to get that knowledge and then still also find a way of making that impact, which is what ultimately led me to going down the route of operations. I'm being able to learn about like Excel programs, being able to learn about time and task management, systems building, customer service, things of that nature. And so started doing that, did that for 8 years. Within the time of doing that, I started as a member of an operations team and ultimately became a director of operations. I think that was its own very interesting perspective of like Chris, to your point of like accountability and like how do you navigate like providing accountability but at least for me like providing accountability but also providing like a warmth and a support while having those conversations about accountability. Because to your point, like too much of anything in excess is not healthy. Too much anxiety in excess is definitely not healthy. Like I believe there's like a little, there's like a sweet spot of like, okay, like I need to feel anxious about this thing because it matters to me. But to like be hit over the head with it and internalize it on a daily basis does not create a healthy environment for you as a person. So saying that to say being a leader and then figuring out how do I keep the main thing, which is making sure that these kids get the support that they need because they deserve that. But also knowing that my staff are also people that need support in their own type of ways was something that I was consistently trying to find the right balance and sweet spot for. And then ultimately decided to take a step back from being a director of operations after COVID, because I found that as I tried to find my balance of being present in the work, being present for my kids, being present for my staff, this pandemic kind of came in and then that balance was gone. There was no way
Yeah.
Yeah.
to figure out how to be there in a healthy way for everyone else and myself as well, which encouraged me to kind of take a step back and pivot into then, like I said, a network operations role, which then gave me more flexibility to still have an impact for kids and like step into like a new pathway, but still like find me again, I guess. And I would say like definitely the last few years has been a journey of like rediscovering myself and my mental health and my emotional well-being and things of that nature. Yeah, I hope that answered the question. But like I
Yeah.
think that's
Yeah.
been like a snapshot of my career in education up until this point.
Yeah. And Andrea, what about you? I mean, I think just for the sake of our audience, we've all worked in similar educational settings within a charter school,
Yeah.
right? I don't know if, Brian, do you have any other educational experience outside of charter? Have you been in the public schools,
I mean,
private school
I
sector?
grew up in public schools. So like I'm from New York City, born and raised. I've gone to public schools my whole life.
That's right.
I went to Brooklyn Tech, which is like, its own type of like public school, but it's still specialized. And then, funny enough, my sister and I were 1 year apart. We both went the public school route up until sixth grade. Then she went prep for prep and then started doing prep schools while I went the public school route and did public schools. And then we ultimately went to the same college at the same time, which was like, all right, I got the discount. This is awesome. And then we both then pivoted going back into education, her then becoming like a science teacher for private schools for an extended period of time, and then me working in charter. So it's like we've kind of done this dance around one another. But from my own experience, yes, like having been a product of public schools, I got my own feelings about public schools, private schools, charter schools. I think these are all just like tools to get us to the right outcome and different ways of approaching education. I think there are pros and cons to all of them. I just hope one day we can actually sit down and have a conversation about what are the things that we want to take from each of these spaces to try to create like maybe a super mega school and that could work potentially one day. But that those are my
Hey,
thoughts.
call the Department of Education and help them figure
Do
it
we
out.
still have one?
If you can get a
Because
hold
now
of
I'm
them.
confused.
If you
I don't know. Here we are.
Much like Brian and Chris, I also did not start with an educational background. I studied history in my undergrad and anthropology, and then went right in for a master's in history with no intent to teach. I did not have any desire to teach. That was not even an inkling in my brain cell to teach. Like I wanted to go do research and travel and work in a museum. No desire. But like post graduation, I was like, what does one actually do with a master's degree in history? Like there's trying to get a museum job is actually ridiculous. They want you to be published and all this other nonsense, which like for a early 20 something year old straight out of grad school,
Yeah.
absolutely not. I'm not going to be published anywhere. So I kind of sat around with my degree for like a month or two and was like, what can I do? I need to be a big girl and get a job. So what can I do with this? And I come from a family of teachers pretty much. So I was like, we're going to throw the hat in the ring and just see how that goes and see if I like it and, just kind of test out the waters. I applied to pretty much everything: Catholic schools, private schools, charter schools, public schools. The process was
It's
definitely an
ridiculous.
interesting one between public school extending interviews and then completely, as the new terminology now, not back in like 2014, but now is ghosting, when you have full on establishments just completely ghosting you for like details on when to come in for your interview. Um, I did wind up with success with interviewing for multiple charter schools when I eventually was hired. However, funnily enough, I applied for a history teaching job for high school and I was offered elementary school. So, but at that point, I was kind of like, you know what, we're going to do it. I have to, listen, I got to be an adult and that's what we're going to do. And we're just going to figure it out as we go. And that's when I actually started working with Brian at the elementary school in Brooklyn. Us born and raised New Yorkers got to stick together. Right, Brian? Yeah. But honestly, I loved it. I mean, it was tough. I'll never forget what my mentor told me my first year of teaching. Because obviously, like, there's a lot of professional development attached to charter schools. And I guess I must have not really been as bought in as other people that were hired during that professional development. So during my first like full like mid year, like, let's sit down and talk about your performance. The piece of feedback that always stood out to me was, yeah, I could totally tell that you weren't bought in when you started, but now you are. Like, I see the difference. And I'm like, I guess something changed. I guess somewhere along the line, like, it started to click and stick. So, like, I found my love for teaching. I also, when I was hired, it was a time where they were actually paying for you to go back to school and get
Mm.
a master's degree in education. So I was doing that on top of teaching. So that also was really helpful because it gave me the actual training and like degree
Yeah, but the
experience
practical
yeah,
application of
yeah,
what you're
actually do
reading.
it. So it's not just like a matter of like, I'm winging it and I'm gonna figure it out. Like Chris kind of had to do. I had that extra support of like, we're gonna put you in school so you're actually trained to do this career.
Yeah. I think a lot of teachers, for the most part, there's two type of teachers. There's a teacher that stumbles into teaching. They have a
Yeah.
totally different background. My undergrad was in criminal justice. I
Yeah.
mean, I was going to the police force and arresting criminals and doing all of that, right? And then I turned around and went into special education and just
Yeah.
ran with it with many degrees later. But the other type of teachers are the ones who say, I'm going to do this. I want to teach. I was inspired by either a teacher or
Yeah.
an experience, right? So you have those two. But the one thing that those type of teachers have in common, and Brian and Chris, you can agree with me, is the burnout, is the systematic issues, it's the financial limitations, it's the life shifts, right? If your personal life is shifting, they don't care, right? You have to be at work, do the same thing. I think we get stuck in the routine, and sometimes routine can stress us out, right? The routine of going in at 6 o'clock in the morning and coming home at 6 o'clock at night, or the routine of, having no preps or dealing with one particular student or classroom, right? What kind of, Brian and Chris, what kind of examples can you share regarding one particular instance where you were like, wow, perhaps I should start looking in a different direction because I'm just tired or, or
I don't mind going first on this one if you're okay with that, Chris. First, I want to say I do think that burnout is not exclusive to education, right? I do think that
Oh,
people
yeah.
in the span of like their lives experience burnout in a number of different spaces, whether that's like burnout as a parent. I am not a parent. Here you are. Like, you know better than me. I do not know what it means to be a
Absolutely.
parent, and I don't know what it means to feel burnt out as a parent. But I do think that there are many spaces in life and times in which people can experience burnout. And I think that burnout is a culmination of like a lack of boundary setting that allows you to like restore yourself to keep doing the work that you need to do. It's like you start running a sprint instead of a marathon, or you run a marathon as a sprint, basically, is the way I think about it. Um, in terms of like my own personal journey with navigating burnout, I know that for me, and like I've been in therapy for like the last 2.5, 3 years. So like I've had a lot of conversations about like what got me here and there at that point in time. For me, my point of burnout really hit, I want to say March 2022. That I just remember going for a walk and just talking and just like hearing myself say the words, I don't think I can do this job anymore. And it was the first time I had said it out loud. And I knew that that was coming from a place of, I don't feel well now. Something feels off, and I don't fully know the scope of why I don't feel okay. But I know that if I keep going this route, it's going to get worse in a way that I'm no longer comfortable living. Like I like kind of just like started forecasting forward and was like, okay, like my money will be great, but my anxiety will be through the roof. My body weight will probably put on another 20 pounds. I should also add, like during COVID, I lost 20 pounds in a very healthy way, like taking walks, eating better, like things like that. And the second we got back into schools, that 20 pounds came right back. And I then kind of just like extrapolated forward from there. Like if I keep doing this the way that I'm doing it, hypertension, like my life is not going to be my life anymore. And I just had to make a very tough decision about walking away from a space where I felt very comfortable, where I felt very loved, where I had literally grown from like, I think I got there at like 23 and I was leaving at like in my 30s. Like, like and occasionally I still even go back to that space because I see people that are still there and it's like always like good love, good energy, good vibes. But that, like, as I unpack like where I was at the point of realizing that I was burnt out and like what got me there, it was just a holistic across the board in pretty much every space of my life. I had no boundaries. I had no professional boundaries. There were just like no boundaries in a way that was helpful. And I was pouring myself into everything 100%. And my job also happened to be the thing that was letting me continue to pour 101% and then still tell me that it wasn't enough. And so now I'm internalizing that and I'm trying to be better and maximize my efficiency, like beyond the point of what I could actually do. And so, like, I look back and I say, I can't necessarily blame my employer for my lack of boundaries. Like, that's on me. Now I can look at them and say, "Yo, you let me fall apart. You saw the warning signs and you just like kept me going and going and going and going." And that's where it's like, well, you're a business. Like at the end of the day, you're just trying to get return on your investment. So like, can I like should I be mad at you for being exactly who you told me you are? Nah, that's real. You're a business. But what I am looking forward to in thinking about whether or not it is that I want to return to education, like I said, it's something on my mind. Now that I do have more healthy boundaries and a more stronger understanding of like who I am and what it is that I expect from my professional environment, is there a way for me to go into this space, be able to keep all the great things that I love about working with kids and supporting families and making an impact while also saying, but it's 5 p.m. and I'm just going to go to the gym today because I've committed to doing that for my. I can maybe
Yeah.
give
Give
you until
yourself
7
limit.
tomorrow, but like today it's 5 and that's it. So this is like
Thank you for sharing, Brian. Chris, what was your epiphany or your point of epiphany? Like, hmm,
I definitely had a very strong epiphany. It hit me a little heavy. There actually was kind of, it was not a moment, but kind of an episode. So when I was teaching, I switched roles and I switched into a general education setting from, I was in a contained setting and I switched within the same school. I switched into a general education setting and, being very statistics and data driven. And let me also say, accountability and standards are not bad in and of themselves. I just want to put that out there. Because it's important to measure success. But in this environment, when it was student success is determining how our teachers live and act is kind of taking away a teacher's ability to act according to their professional sensibilities. When you strip teachers of their professional knowledge, that definitely becomes a problem as it was in this environment. And so I had switched roles and my students had a different teacher and now they had me. And so their interquarter assessment data was deemed bad.
yeah.
I think it was whether or not it was actually bad, I think the students were just high performing in and of themselves. I don't believe the data was actually bad, but it was deemed bad just because they were going through a transition. So what that meant for me was, I was already staying after school. Now they were adding another professional development for me as I
Fix
was
it.
transitioning.
Yeah.
So I was still in my past role, right? So they never took me off that. So I'm still in the contained role. I'm now in the new role. I'm already after school. And now I'm a before school as well, in addition to the professional developments that I had on Fridays. So I was in the building an hour early, I was in the building an hour late, already doing what everybody else was doing, in addition to what I was formerly doing. And it was at that point, and I recall this, it was no one told me that I was going to get this before school as well. And I remember after that hour, I was like, oh, this is an everyday thing now that we're going to have. So I went to the person above me and I was like, I'm telling you that I cannot do this and be okay. And the response was, this will be good. This will be good for you. And I was like, I am telling you to your face that it will not be. This is not going to work out. And it was, you'll be good. Well, I applied to graduate schools, which I used to kind of break up, that phase of my life because I had just felt at that time, kind of what Brian was saying, this is a business. Why am I mad at you for being exactly what you told me you were going to be? But we have now this environment, I guess, in education, which I saw very clearly with my own eyes. I'm like dying one day to like see just the prevailing attitudes in a public school. But it's like now that schools are so competition driven, it's like, why am I why am I mad at you that you're trying to extract profit out of me? Why am I mad at you that you're cutting corners? You are you're driving me home. You want me to work harder, more efficiently, more effectively. Why am I mad at that?
I think
Why am
there's a
I
certain systematic way to go about it rather than just putting it all on you at once. But I think that Brian and Chris give great examples of different scenarios, same world, different scenarios, but are they really different? Do you guys really think that all of these burnout scenarios are different? Because the feeling is the same, right? I think the burdens of adding additional things to our plates is common in education, right? But that doesn't mean that we can all handle it day in and day out, right? And so I think that, and correct me if I'm wrong, again, well, for Chris's sake, I was in the environment. And Chris was originally, let me give some background. He was on my team, my special education team in the self-contained classroom. So when they gave me the information, it's okay, Chris, you didn't have to tell him that because I already went toe to toe with them in my office, right? Because make it make sense. And I think that's what we say all the time. Make the decisions make sense. I'm only one person. This is a classroom full of individualism to its core, especially the classroom that you were in, Chris, whether it was self-contained, general, inclusion, right? Let me do my craft. And I think what burnout can look like also is the fact that I have the knowledge. Let me share the knowledge. I'll give you the results that you need. But much like what you were saying, have that conversation with me. Let's sit down. Let me provide feedback. If I am able to give feedback, do you know how much that takes off of my shoulders? Now, in my situation, whether you wanted my feedback or not, I'm going to give you my feedback because I need to get that off my shoulders, right? Just like you guys need to know your boundaries and your limits. We all have it, no matter what role you're in, para, educator, administrator, support, right? We all have our boundaries. And if we're not allowed to communicate or provide feedback or, that's going to cause other issues. And burnout's going to be this small. There's going to be bigger issues than that. And just real quick, have Brian, because I'm just so interested in other people's experiences. Were you guys able, Chris, you gave us a great example of no, you were not able to provide feedback. But Brian, in your instances, how was the communication level and feedback and did that help you in some ways?
I can't say that I can just tie it down to like over the course of 8 years, this is what the feedback was like, or over the course of 2 years, this is what the feedback mechanism looked like. I think I navigated varying levels of a willingness to receive feedback, if that makes sense, right? Like, I think if I think about my earlier years on in working in education, I should also say I think educational environments are very much a reflection of the mindsets of the people that build the culture. Like, I think the people who choose to be there and what they choose to say, these are our values, these are our priorities, these are the things that we're going to accept, they then express those values in the way that they lead. And so like when I think about my earlier years on in being in like education, I think I was surrounded by like some really great, amazing leaders who had a vision of what it looked like to develop people in operations, had a vision of what it meant to create like safe, effective, excellent schools. And do I think they did it perfectly? Absolutely not. I think they did like really great for my foundation. And I think that there was always, at least for me, what felt like a community vibe of all of these people are invested in me getting greater here. I think I will also say like that was like my elementary school experience of like, well, my own internal elementary school of being in education, right? Like I'm just starting. I think as I then start to graduate and like move into different levels of being a leader and being present, I think as you go different levels, you see the conversations are kind of different. Like the culture that people present looks different. The values that they present look different. And I think there are certain conversations you get brought into that make you feel like, oh yeah, I'm really accountable for this budget, huh? Okay, understood. Like it's not just about now like the field trip and like the families have a good time. It's is the school enrolled enough for you to have enough student population to meet the FTE for you to be able to keep your staff, right? Like those conversations just shift. And so then the tone people talk to you when they have those conversations just kind of like a little bit different. So I said it all to say that I feel like the deeper I got and the higher I climbed, also with the change of the guard, the change of the people who are like making the culture and their priorities are now shifting as the world is shifting. People now start talking to you a little bit different. And sometimes when you start talking to them back, they don't necessarily really ready to hear it all the way.
They don't poke the bear
Yeah.
anymore.
And so I think I remember having this conversation with a good friend of mine who we were just like reflecting on how long we had been working in the space that we were working in, and he had said to me like, you know, at some point it seems like there is less value in retaining us the longer that we're here in that we kind of start to have like a perspective that might be a little bit different. And you know, some spaces are not ready for change, right? Like we could talk about COVID, right? Like no one was ready. Well, obviously it's a global pandemic. No one saw that coming, but like no one was ready to move from like in-person school to virtual school. And then on top of that, a lot of schools that have been very good at what they do were not ready to figure out how to be good at something else. And so it's like if it's been working for me tried and true, I have to stick to my guns and do the thing that has gotten me to this level of success. Can't really make the space or the bandwidth to bring in something new because then I have to like figure out what am I taking off my plate to like bring in this new thing. But no one really takes anything off a plate, right? Like we can all talk about like the initiatives that get started. Chris, to your point, like someone said, okay, here's your teacher schedule. Then they said, okay, we're gonna add on evening school. Then we're gonna add on morning school. But no one's having a conversation of like, so can this person that we've added all these things on for, is that actually a sustainable load? And now we're just gonna keep adding things on top, and then we're gonna be surprised when the person can't hold the weight. And it's like, that was predictable. Like Chris said it to your face, that wasn't gonna work. His manager also said it to your face, this isn't gonna work. And if you didn't want to hear it, then that's unfortunate. But to answer your original question of like the feedback mechanisms and things of that nature, I will say that in my like nature of like undoing tendencies of people pleasing, my ability to give feedback in a constructive, direct way probably wasn't my greatest skill set. That being said, when I got to the point of having to give this feedback because I'm so frustrated, irritated, like burnt out, I guess, like, or getting close to being burnt out and trying to get that support so I don't get there. At this point, I got to say what I got to say. And I hope that you hear me. I am trying to be very intentional about how I say what I say, but I do need you to hear me when I'm communicating this thing. And I think what got me to the point of feeling like, all right, maybe it's time for me to consider another avenue is when I started to click for me like this lifestyle isn't going to change because the support that I need just isn't there. And that support could be like it could have not been there because schools don't get the financial resources that like for-profit companies get. Like if we could have an extra like $3 million per school, that would be awesome because then maybe we could just hire another teacher to help Chris. So Chris isn't doing morning and evening school, right? Like that would be awesome, but there's no money here, so we don't get bodies. So we're all dying to make this make sense. And it's like, but we can't make it make sense. And so until America, I feel like, has that real talk conversation of like, are we actually putting our dollars where they need to be so that our children can be better? Like, we're just going to keep having this conversation about burnout because there's just not enough like people resource to like offset the load. So
Yeah.
went on a tangent, but that's
I
all.
definitely agree there. I also think with our current government climate, that's, the conversation might take a little bit longer than we'd hope for. Brian said a lot of things, though, that I resonated with. I definitely will say I got spoiled my first year of teaching with the leadership that I was introduced to.
Word for sure.
Very much so. Like that was set the bar very high for me. And I don't think I've encountered leadership since then that has like they had a very clear vision of what they wanted, and they also were very transparent about it. Like it was not a we're going to keep this gatekeep this information from you. Like it was a very open dialogue, and I have struggled since leaving that school with leadership. In all honesty, the amount of times I've butt heads with leadership at the other school that I worked at, especially because we just changed through leadership left, right, and upside down like it was nothing. I also definitely agree. I don't think the longer you're with any particular place, they don't have the same drive to keep you there because you've seen so much now that you're no longer fully aligned with that initial, like, this is what we want, right? Like, I have seen myself in phases of, yeah, I'm going to people please, I'm going to do whatever you tell me. But being almost 10 years in now, you're going to get more pushback on things. And I think the people that wind up being retained in those, like, and kept are the people that continue to just do that people pleasing, and don't put in actual input or give like actual feedback on things that can make us better. And they don't want to hear that all the time.
I think the challenge is, and I'm going to tell you
Yeah.
from an administrative standpoint of view, I think the challenge is you have to follow these protocols.
Yeah.
But I have my own philosophy in education,
But I think that's
right?
the
You
problem.
start generating your own philosophy and practices and instructional
Yeah,
methods.
yeah, yeah.
And then you're saying, my goodness, this is effective. I'm going to keep it. Oh no, what's coming down the pipe? We have to change this. We're going to pilot this new curriculum, and then we're going to also pilot the way you're going to instruct it for this particular student or this group of students. But why? It's working the way we have it, right? So it's like a lot of times it's not teacher burnout, it's clashing of the titans, right? This works in my classroom. I have classroom management skills that are effective with my instruction that is going to show some progression. And then here I have an administrator who hasn't stepped into my classroom and let's do this and let's try this because this is, and I know in public school, these are our standards. This is what we're piloting. This is how we have to do it. You sat in a professional development for a whole 2 or 3 days and we're going to roll it out tomorrow. And it's like, whoa, I have my own philosophy.
To jump in on that, I think I'm not going to speak to what I think the institution wanted me to feel. I just have to speak to how I ultimately felt. I think part of really why I went back to graduate school, why I saw that as an appropriate retreatism was I wanted weight behind my opinions, behind my pedagogy in the environment that we were in. I just felt that I didn't have the professional backing. I almost felt at some points taken advantage of, just that it was here's the prescribed, here's what we're going to do, here's what we're going to do. And okay, I know who my students are, I know who they are, but that's not really enough to criticize, to critique, to improve anything that you guys are telling me to do. It's all coming from the top down, and I am a passive receptacle of pedagogy, a receptacle of information. I'm a piggy bank waiting for you to put coins in. So I thought that what I'm currently doing, going back to graduate school, would sort of give weight behind what I believed, what I believe now. I guess just that imperative to have some kind of professional knowledge. I don't know.
Good thought. It's just it's so incredible everybody is in the same field with so many different examples of every scenario that you can think of that will have either challenges, burnout, feedback that can go smoothly or cannot go smoothly. Let's be honest.
Yeah. I would also like,
But
if you don't mind, I would also add that I think burnout can look differently for people, right? Like burnout can look like I am leaving this organization altogether and I'm going to take time to go find myself. Burnout can look like I'm going to become passive now in this space. I am no longer going to lean my voice into these conversations. I am going to just come and do the things that you've asked me to do because that is what you are asking of me. I think it can look like inadvertently becoming the thing you hate the most, right? Like becoming that educator that's like here and actually causing harm to your kids because you are so captivated with the way the adults have treated you that you no longer remember why you're here. Like I told my, and this is when I then made the decision to leave. Like I had told myself, if in this job for kids, it becomes more about the adults than the kids for me, then I need not be because I'm no longer focused on the thing that I got into this for. And like honestly, when I hit that point of March, I was like, if I come back here, it's going to be about the adults, and I'm going to become an angry, frustrated, not happy individual when I have to be here at X hour of the morning or stay until X hour of night or just exist in this space. And my kids don't need to see me like that. Like they deserve to like remember me as the person that like took them on that field trip when they were really young or met them for the first time at that enrollment event, or the parents that deserve to see me as that person that they pulled to the side and said, "Hey, my daughter's acting up. Like I know like she doesn't have many male figures in her life. Can you just like talk to her?" And you become like that pseudo like uncle father figure for a kid. I wanted them to remember me that way, and I needed to take the time to get right with me so that I could not be that angry person. So just saying that to say, like, I think burnout does show up very differently for people, and how they decide to navigate, like, how they show up is also with like real world implications, right? Like, people still need jobs, people still got to pay their rent. Like,
Sure.
it's not ideal to be out here unemployed longer than you need to be or want to be, but like, especially if you get tenure and you're like, hey, I'm like paid for life. I've done my schooling in this. I'm invested in this. Like, all right, well, I guess I'll just stay until I don't have to be here anymore. But you're like,
Yeah, right. The world doesn't stop turning just because, we change careers or make a different life choice, right? Like
Right.
it still goes. We got bills, we got adults. Like I have a kid. Like I can't just drop everything and be like, we'll be fine. Like I still need to be able to financially support her. So the world doesn't just stop.
And that's what if that's your only skill set, right? My only
Yeah.
skill set is education. What am I going to do if I want
Mm,
to do something? And I remember at my burnout point was 2.5 years ago. Every day I would walk into work and say, I got to look for a new job. I can't stand it here. I got to leave. And right, we would have a powwow about what's going to be our next career choice. But the question that I always ask myself, and this is the other side of the coin to our discussion, is where am I going to go? I've only studied education. I have all of these degrees and experiences in education. I don't have additional skills to go into a different career path. So, what jobs are out there for me to get out of the brick and mortar? Because for me, it was just being in the building that the moment I stepped foot in that building, just this, the first person that said good morning to me, I was like, I got to see you all day.
you got the Dungeon
Like,
Dragons
I
first thing
don't
in the
want to
morning.
do this,
yep.
or, oh, I have to put on a smile to say
Yep.
good morning to the kiddos when
Fake it till
I'm
you make it.
pedo at this certain administrator, right?
Yeah.
And so I was ready to go, but I wasn't ready to face the fact that
Yeah.
my skill set wasn't going to expand into another career
Yeah. Yeah.
venture.
I have
So,
so many thoughts
with
there.
that being said, where can I go with my skill set if I want to get out of education? Or not entirely out of education, right? I
Yeah.
still have to be in the world of education
Yeah.
because I'm still paying for those certificates on the wall.
Yes and no. Right. Like there are a ton of job opportunities.
I
I
would
think
love to
when
take
you're
this
like
one
being a teacher,
offline.
there's a lot of transferable skills that we inherently wind up developing or have naturally on our own. Like we have to have good communication skills. We deal with adults, we deal with kids, we deal with parents, we deal with admin, right? You have to be able to communicate. Leadership skills, right? It's not just on you being a leader to other adults. It's also when it comes to like managing student behaviors, it's a broader thing. Project
Okay.
management, I'm sure Brian can talk about that. That is a very big skill set, right? Problem solving.
Mm.
All of us, regardless of where we were at in education, we had to have problem solving skills. It's not like every day is perfect and there's not one hiccup in your day. You have to be able to think on your feet and think fast, right?
Sometimes in 10 seconds
In 10
flat.
seconds, yeah. When you've got a kid running out the door and you're like, what do I do now? Because I have to go catch them. And then data, right? And analyzing that data and researching, because all facets of education, whether you're on an operationals front or in the classroom, deals with data. Like we have to look at data and constantly figure out what we're going to do with that, right? So there are career like adjacent paths like you can do on an educational front, right? Like you can do instructional design curriculum. What are you doing? I'm
I'm
not there
just
yet.
looking.
There you Oh, she's always touching stuff while I'm trying to look at things, and she's like, "Let me just do
Love
this to the screen." I'm like, "Where did everything go? Where'd all the notes go now?"
I would love to dive into responding to this question too if you are.
Oh, you're going
Oh
Going
yeah,
to.
to,
for
You're
yeah.
going
sure.
to.
For sure.
I saw it already in your eyes as soon as I started talking about it, Brian. So I was like, "He's right.
There's
We're good." Yeah.
illumination behind.
For sure.
But yeah, I mean, Brian, if you want to jump in, I'll hand the
Yeah.
floor to you.
So I will
It's all yours.
also I'll give context that like I have left jobs without jobs lined up, right? Like I have
Yeah.
made the space and time for me to take a step back and try to figure out where do I need to be right with myself for a moment before I even think about applying to another employer. I will also say, like, I intentionally chose to work in operations because I could see how that could be a more marketable title if I wanted to pivot into different professions and careers. But that being said, I think that where a lot of educators struggle with figuring out what to do next, it starts with like this, it starts from this place of fear to your point of like, what can I actually do? Like, who would actually hire me? And I think that starts because we entered a field maybe through happenstance. Like, we didn't plan to be educators. Like, someone recruited us, or we showed up at an event, or someone had a conversation with us and we found ourselves here, and like life happened and we found ourselves in this field, as opposed to the way that actually it works in a lot of other industries of like I actually had to like fill out a job application and like go through 27 no's till I got my first yes, right? Like, and even in those 27 no's, you're refining your process for marketing yourself or talking about yourself or speaking on your experience. And because we haven't actually done that as an adult, like we went from like kids in college that then like kind of looked up into this and then we just kept doing it. And now we're like 27, 28, 32, 33, trying to figure out what to do next. Like, oh, wait, I've never actually like sat down and thought about like, what does the job application process look like? How do I market myself as an individual? So I think there are a lot of steps to it. I think the first, to Andrea's point, is like being able to like point out what are your skills, like being able to speak about yourself beyond just a teacher. You are more than a teacher. To Chris's point, you're solving for poverty. That's a lot. We might be out here making budgets with parents because they can't figure out how they're feeding their kids this evening, right? So now I'm a financial planner. We might be having a conversation with a kid about something that they saw that made them feel very upset, and now we're a therapist, right? Like, you have more skills than you give yourself credit for, and you need to take some time to actually ask yourself, well, what do I do? The best place I found to start is literally going to the JD for the position that you signed up for. Like, it's kind of already listed out for you, the list of things that you're expected to do on a daily basis. Then from there, fill in the blanks because there's a lot of stuff that's not in that JD. Like, actually think about your traditional workday and list out all the typical responsibilities that you do. Then go by season. Like, what are the things that I do that are seasonal? What are the things that I do that are like specifically within a month? Like, when you're doing state exam tutoring, that's a whole different beast compared to like being a typical educator on a daily basis. So, thinking about like, what is the long, exhaustive list of things that I do? Then from there, I found that it's important to have different versions of your resume. Like, you need to have some semblance of the types of positions you're looking at, right? So like, do you want to go into HR positions? Do you want like, and that starts with knowing like, what do you like doing? Like, actually ask yourself, like, I like teaching because it allows me to tap into this part of me. What other positions or professions out there exist that allow me to tap into that part of me? Okay, cool. Are there ways now that like my skill set and the way that I describe it, I can apply it to those other positions that allow me to tap into that same part of me? And so now make a different version of your resume that applies to each one of these positions. Like, when I was going hard about job hunting the first time, I would find positions that I felt I would want to do that. I would copy the job description into a Word document And then I would ask myself, what have I done that is the same thing as this job description bullet? And then I would write it out, right? Like I literally had to do that work of what are you asking for? And then what do I do that is that? And then I'd put that in my resume. And so I would have like a master version of my resume that's like 7 pages long. But then as I'm thinking about these different types of positions, I'm like, okay, this is my HR resume where I'm literally just leaving the bullets that resonate with what an HR manager would be looking for. This is my project management resume that leaves just the bullets that a project manager would be looking for. This is my professional development and curriculum creation resume that would be like what a curriculum developer and professional development manager would be looking for. And so when I'm applying to jobs, I'm sending the right type of resume for the position because I'm not reading a 7 page long resume if I'm trying to hire somebody for a role. Like I got to look through 500 of them as it is. So like, let's get to the point, help you understand, like, should I even consider interviewing you? And that's kind of how you get your foot in the door. Now there's also like an intersection of luck, right? Like timing in which positions open or close, like you don't really have full control over that, but you also have to talk to people too. Like connect with your friends who are still in education, connect with your friends who are no longer in education, connect with your friends who are never in education and be like, yo, I'm about to start making that move. Like, can we like get coffee and just like talk about life? And then maybe they're like, you know what? I know such and such that you should connect to as well. And then it becomes this form of networking that allows you to put your name in certain conversations for different roles. So it's like this combination of like staying ready and getting ready, right? Like you got to stay ready by making the resume and thinking through the different ways that you can market yourself, but you get ready by also like staying in touch with people that are really good people that can put your name in certain conversations in different rooms. And like hopefully with a bit of luck and persistence, you end up finding a thing that resonates with what you want to do. That's my 2 cents. That's how I've approached it at least. I can't say like it always works, but like, it's helped me it's helped me get a few jobs that have been different from what I was doing before that when I took on that role felt more in alignment with what I see myself doing next.
And I think that's very interesting on like a very personal level. Like I think you like really walked, especially me because I'm new in this field, you really like walk us through like the step by step to like entering into sort of like different fields. All I have to add to that, just being at Teachers College right now, it's been very interesting to see sort of the ecosystem, the broader ecosystem of careers in education. This time last month, I was in DC for a policy panel, and it's just very interesting to hear people's paths. There's even within education, you were talking a little bit about human resources, and that's something that's, obviously very closely related to education, but outside of education, not necessarily, but it can be outside education. For former educators, and now I'm thinking about this 5, 10 years down the line, where am I going to be? There's government roles, there's policy roles, right? And policy itself is enormous. You work for a particular government entity, you work for, name drop, the Bipartisan Policy Center, right? There's private funds that are involved in the creation of policy, both state and national level. Higher education, a lot of people get PhDs and teach education at the college or even beyond level. We were saying there's curriculum writing. Absolutely. That is sort of an office-based role, right? And you either do that for an entity, you could do that for a charter school, at the state level, at the local level, wherever. And also administration, right? Just the field of education, the ecosystem of education is so enormous, actually. There are so many. Working in education does not have one uniform look. I think a lot of people think it's just working in a classroom. It is so different at so many different levels. So I don't think, my master's degree is going to depreciate ever. I think that there's just such a huge, huge, huge ecosystem of things that you can go into anyway.
So can only imagine what it feels like to be a student at Columbia right now. So
Here at this point, there's a lot going on, as
copy.
there tends to be. That's us. Yeah.
Okay.
So I don't know.
I'm not leaving.
But yeah, she's refusing to leave. So it is what it is. I'm going to pause this really quickly and I'll keep everything you guys said and I'll just edit and then we'll pick back up. Hopefully that turns off and then we can.
They said it should be done.
Okay, so thinking about, everything we talked about, right? Because you guys kind of hit it like right then and there, like nail on the head when it comes to new opportunities for teachers. What was the hardest part you would say about your transition out of your current roles in education or your current jobs? And also, like, how do you actually stay motivated to continue your job search?
So would you like to go first, or would you like me to go first? How do you feel?
I think you should go first.
Okay, because I have so many. These questions. Um,
Let's get transitioning out
yeah,
and
I
right.
think the biggest challenge to start there was rediscovering my confidence.
Mm.
For the times that I have transitioned, I left those roles questioning my capacity to find success in another space. The first time that I left was I'd been there for an extended period of time and I hadn't interviewed in a long time. I knew I had found success in this very specific context for almost a decade. And I knew I could be great here, but I hadn't proven to myself that I could be great somewhere else. And I questioned myself on my ability to do so, kind of doubling back on what we had been saying earlier about anything in excess can be like detrimental. And so at that point in my career, I've been so inundated with feedback and like being told here are all the ways that you can still get greater that I left feeling like I am no longer great, right? Like I do not have the capacity for greatness. And I had to like really go back to the drawing board and rediscover who I am. And like I remember even like when after I'd gotten the job and had been in it for some months, I got an email from my then CEO that I like screenshotted and sent to like a lot of good friends of mine of her just like giving me praise for like how great I am doing at my role and how much I've been like a culture add to the organization. And like I actually like cried reading that, like because I didn't feel the confidence in myself that like I was great. And I was like, even the CEO of the company is telling me that you are great, then I think I'm doing a good job, but I still didn't believe it. And like that was probably the hardest part. Like I said, just rebuilding myself and understanding that like because I've decided to leave one set of circumstances, it does not mean that I am not capable of being great somewhere else. So I think that was the first and most difficult challenge, just rebuilding my confidence and understanding like how great I am. I think once kind of like let myself get over that mental health hurdle, it was then about like then like hankering down to do the work of like again thinking about how do I market myself, like what jobs do I want to be doing? How do I talk about myself in a certain type of way? And I think my default setting when I first like left my first or my second job in education was like look for other jobs in education because obviously like I can get those jobs. And it wasn't until like maybe two jobs later that I was like, oh wait, I can actually like I actually need to stop looking at education because that became its own like mind array situation of I no longer feel comfortable applying to roles in education because I feel like there's some politic happening here that's impacting whether or not my name is still good in certain circles. So like I had to like then grapple with that, leaving that role. Like, am I like still as great as I've been told that I am? Do I still consider myself to be great? Because now I'm getting to like final rounds of interviews. People are asking for references, but I'm still not getting the offer letter and I'm confused as to why. And I realized there was some like there was some paranoia in my mind of like, yo, did you talk to someone in this space and did that person say something not well about me or my character or my ability to do this work? And it then made me feel like, all right, I just don't trust education right now and I need to take a step back. But in terms of where I eventually got to was realizing that I genuinely don't know what people are thinking as they read my application, but it doesn't stop me from filling out the application. So I kind of need to go for volume. Like at some point, you still have to fill out the application to get the job. You miss 100% of the shots you don't take. So I need to just take more shots and hope that something lands. Of course, I need to do it strategically, make sure, again, my resume makes sense, that I'm like practicing my interview questions, that I know how to speak about myself and things of that nature. But I still got to fill out the applications. So at some point it was like, bump it, and I think I got that piece of advice from a friend of mine. It was just like, just keep filling out the apps. Like it's not going to change if you don't fill out an application. So just keep going, keep going, keep going. And trust that when that thing calls you back that you're supposed to be saying yes to calls you back, then you'll know to say yes.
Yeah. Even just being so early in my education career, I definitely feel and understand what you're talking about when you say, um, You say all of that. And honestly, even within the field of education, it can be, sometimes difficult to figure out exactly what skills are transferable from like one setting to another. I'm in kind of the first transition of my career right now, especially right now because, I'm living in a new state. I'm trying to figure, and there is no similarity between states in terms of, transferability. I'm coming from New Jersey now, I'm in New York. Totally different standards, totally different requirements. So it can be a very challenging ecosystem in a lot of ways, even within just the field of education, trying to figure out what transfers and what doesn't necessarily. So as I'm navigating that for the first time, I am not sure where I will be or where I will end up. And there is a very vibrant sort of community, a lot of options, whether I want to end up working in a school or not in the city. There are some settings that I was considering that are bilingual education programs that are provided by the state. That is not technically a classroom environment, but that is something that I am considering right now. But to speak back to burnout and what I was personally feeling when I left or when I chose to exit from my last role. Like what's been said, the feelings of confidence, the feelings of inadequacy. I definitely absolutely felt that. And that is why I went back to graduate school. And maybe that is the case for all of education, is just wanting more education. Maybe that's all we are. Maybe we're just perpetual, you know, I've heard it referred to as self-improvement junkies, educators and those involved in education. But for me, at least, it was this feeling of, I really felt like I was abandoning something. I felt very guilty, honestly, leaving my last employment. I felt like I was abandoning either the kids or the mission, this abstract idea. And, in education, we feel like that it's a lot more than a job, you know? And maybe that contributes in a lot of ways to the burnout. It's just this prevailing idea that, it's a lifestyle. We are doing something that's much more important than a 9 to 5. We are personally invested. We are anchored to the livelihoods to 30, 60, 90, however many kids we see on a day-to-day basis. We are personally responsible for these kids in a lot of ways. So of course we're gonna burn out. You're working 6, 7, 8 hours a day, up to 10, 12 hours a day. Even when you're not in the building, you're working on grading, lesson planning, and, the success of your children is a sort of like personal importance to you. There are kids too.
Yeah, a piece of advice that I got very early on in my walk in education that I think has really helped me avoid burnout as much as I as long as I had. A former coworker told me, like, your role is to be a resource, not to be the solution. You are here to provide access. You're here to provide information. You're here to give options and choice, but ultimately your children are still the autonomous agents of their life. Like, don't take that from them. Like, they are allowed to make decisions to decide where their lives are going to go. You may not necessarily always agree with their decisions, and where they decide to end up may make you feel a type of way if you are there to hear the end of the story. But if you keep thinking about yourself as like the end all be all, the reason why these kids are going to find success, it is going to hit you all the more hard if they don't manifest the life that you want for them. Like, you are going to be able to be your best self if you can show up and remember, I need to be the best version that I can be in this moment for them. When they are ready to take advantage of the resource that I can provide, that is myself, that is when the real magic can happen. But like, don't make yourself into an idea, right? Like, I can think about, and this is why I think like certain, like, I think why millennials are like, we dove into the career of education, and why some nowadays don't really do it as much, like these younger folk. Our model was like George Feeney, right? Like Boy Meets World, George Feeney was like that teacher, right? He lived right next door to these kids that he grew up, and then he like had one of them like saved from poverty, and like had another one like literally grow with them through college. Like, like that was our model of what it meant to be an educator. And like that showed up in other shows too, right? Like I can't think of any off the top of my head right now, but like the models that we had of what it meant to be an educator was such an idea. And like that idea is something that a lot of educators of our era like wanted to then turn around and manifest for kids, not realizing that this is a scripted show. Like, this is not real. George does not spend his entire waking life thinking about Eric Matthews and Corey Matthews, like in real life. In the show, he did. And that's what allowed him to get those results that had a very scripted outcome. But in any one of those scenarios in real life, it doesn't always pan out that way. Like, that is not how you can actually create your identity to be a sustainable educator and to run the marathon, because now you're like, again, you're sprinting trying to be this idea, and now this is contributing to your burnout. And then what I will add is that I think some school spaces do really good at saying like, no, you need to be that, right? You need to be George Feeney. Like, that is the only way that we are going to find success, is that if you are this teacher who comes in at 4:45 in the morning, stays until 7:30 at night, and is like doing this work consistently on the weekends. But what they don't finish telling in that story is like, so how long did that person last in that role? Right? Like, we don't have that conversation. And so, to the point of it, like, I do think it's imperative of us to like think about how do we do this work long term. It is imperative to think about like how do we do this work today and in the moment. And those are conversations that need to be had together. It's not just like, how do I like go home at 9 o'clock at night and make sure that I'm good for this classroom tomorrow? Like, at some point you got to rest so that you can then actually like fully show up in that classroom in the morning, because that great intention you had grading that paper at 9:30 p.m. last night, maybe you then woke up the next morning and missed something you didn't see in your student because you were so exhausted. And like that could have been the moment that actually mattered more so than you grading this paper. Like, it's always an ebb and flow. So that's my 2 cents. It's it like, you're the resource, not the result, I guess is the best way.
I needed that. Thank you.
I'm glad I could share it. Like, it changed my life and like how I thought about education, because I would have continued to go on burning the candle at both ends, or I would have left maybe after 3 years thinking like I'm not adequate enough because I'm not the same type of teacher that my fifth grade teacher was for me. Right? Me not knowing, like, I'm 10, like, what do I know about my teacher's life in real life? For all I know, they could be like this amazing person here, but like maybe they're going through a divorce at home. Fully understand what their life looks like. This is just what they present for me because they don't want me to feel like they're quote unquote failing me. But like, for all I know, like their life beyond this is actually not sustainable. And then when I left that fifth grade class, I don't know if they came back the next year. Like, these are all things that I don't know because I've romanticized what it means to be an educator in my mind, and now I'm trying to be that vision. And it's just like, I can't live an idea. I need to live my life. But that fire
And
alarm
that's
for you?
definitely like the prevailing symbolism, right? Is that like you are Sandra Bullock in The Blind Side, you know? Not me personally, maybe somebody else. But interestingly, what you're saying kind of resonated with a feeling I've definitely had is that when I first started to feel burnout very early in my first step into my teaching career, it wasn't necessarily a problem when I was feeling tired or burnt out at first. What really alerted me to my own burnout was that I started to feel like I was passing it on to my
Mm,
students. I was like, I am not showing up in the best way that I can anymore. My burnout is now burning other people out, my students, which is like the opposite of what a teacher should be doing.
like, and I would add, like, you're not meant to show up perfect for kids, right? Like, no one is perfect. You will have days where you're gonna say a thing and you're like, "Ooh, I shouldn't have said that." Especially as like an operations person and an administrator, there have been times I have said things to kids next to kids that they then checked me on, or they told their parent and then their parent checked me. And I had to say to myself, "Oh, I said that? Wow, I didn't even catch that I said that." Like, I don't even doubt that you're. I remember telling a parent, I don't even doubt that I said that. If your child said that I said that, I take full accountability for that. Like, it is not what I would have intended to say, but I believe that I said that. I don't remember it, but I believe that I said that. So I apologize for saying that. And like, I've had to then like really be a lot more mindful of like, how do I show up and engage in front of kids? And then I've had to go to those kids and say, like, yo, my bad. That's on me. Like, I shouldn't have said that. Yeah, and then that became like one of my favorite kids ever. But but yeah, like, it is hard to show up in front of kids consistently at 100%, because especially the hour that we start, the hour that we end, like you're a human being. Maybe you didn't take that prep for that day. Maybe somebody called out on your team and now you're unexpectedly covering a classroom and now you're like hungry, tired, and like on top of that, sleep deprived. And maybe somebody said something crazy to you earlier that day and now you're like, ooh, I'm just like on 10. Right. So being able to like own that, like, in this process of being an educator, you're not always going to get it right. You're going to have moments where you're going to say the wrong thing. That's true of parenthood. That's true of like romantic partnership. That's true of like pretty much every other industry. Like, plan to get it wrong. Be okay with getting it wrong one day. Just know that like when you get it wrong, like take the feedback, sit with it, process it, try not to make that same mistake more than you need to make it. Know that you might still make it again, but like don't make it tomorrow. Like if you accidentally curse in front of a kid, don't do that tomorrow. Maybe space it out. Like figure out like, okay, like how do I like be a little bit more conscious with my word choice in front of children, like, and like try to do the work so that it's fewer and further between. But don't like set yourself up to again try to meet an expectation that's just not practical because you'll just remove yourself from the field before you know it. Not fair to you or those kids.
And that can be very difficult, especially in like just the accountability driven environment, I guess we were in. It's like by the end of my
Tenure.
first stint, I was thinking to myself, it's teaching is not the hardest part of my job. As a teacher, it's like it's really appealing to accountability structures. It's really trying to make myself the most attractive I can be to above, not below. It's the students are not the hardest part of my job. Teaching is not the hardest part of being a teacher.
Part of
So
that is
I'm
also
gonna
like part of that is also like the expectations, right? Like you expect kids to be kids. I expect a kid that is 5 years old to come in this classroom and potentially wet themselves one day. It is what it is. Like I knew that was going to happen. I expect a parent to go to bat for their kid because that's your kid. That's your firstborn, secondborn, whatever number born. Like you are meant to advocate for your kid. And you may not always do it in the way that I would like to hear it, but you're gonna do it. So like I expect it. I don't think anybody enters into education expecting the energy they receive top down because there's no book on that really. There's no book on like there's no TV show on this is what the corporate structure behind the school looks like. There's nothing that like can like actually prepare you to understand unless you go to school for education and like in that educational classroom they're actually breaking down like hey, so this is what accountability looks like in schools. These are the different metrics that school leaders hold themselves accountable to, and this is why they then impose those metrics down on you as a teacher, and this is what they're going to hold you accountable towards. Because if they don't meet these metrics, then the school closes, right? Like no one's having that conversation with you before you come into it. It's just go be George Feeney. Like, and so cool, you think, okay, my job is to go be George Feeney. But then now you're telling me, oh, wait, nah, actually, in addition to that, here are the like 17 ways that I need you to like get these metrics done. And then they tie it back to, well, if you do these 17 things in the right way, then you become George Feeney. And it's like, well, you didn't say that. I didn't connect those dots. And so now I'm like, but which one is most important? Like, that's the other thing. We don't talk enough about prioritization. Like, what is our goal for the year? What are our top three? Because we can't solve poverty tomorrow to the point of it, right? Like, we have to choose this is what I'm going to make my bed in. This is what I'm going to stand 10 toes down on. And this is going to be our focus for the year because this is the capacity that we can meet with these limited resources and everything else. Like, okay, we're going to try, give it our best foot forward. But like, if we can meet these goals and then build again on top of these goals for the next year, and then maybe we get really great at these things, then we can then put the energy into these other things. But then that also requires a certain level of staff retention in order to have people who are still aligned with meeting those goals. But you can't have staff retained if they are burnt out. So now it's like, well, we're just going in a cycle. We can't retain our staff because the people burn out. The people burn out because we don't have the resources to invest in the people. We don't have the resources to invest in the people because the people won't stay. We haven't thought about how we're going to get them to stay, but they won't stay because they're burnt out. Like, put up the resources so that we can get the people to stay and then actually avoid the burnout so we can deal with the issue. That make too much sense sometimes, I guess, depending on who you ask.
But I guess, at least in what I've been reading, what I've been studying, it's like it seems like that's almost like the purpose of this movement now to make education more corporate, right? It's like trying to make education be based in like this profit incentive, right? Like this profit motive. It's trying to run schools like companies, which is definitely something I felt when I entered into education. I didn't realize it was so corporate. It really felt like an office job that had kids there.
But I feel like the issue is never that people don't need, like, people don't need incentive to be educators, right? Like, if someone has chosen to be an educator, it's because like they genuinely want to do it, or they're willing to give it a shot enough to like feel like this is the thing they want to do. They need a livable wage, right? Like a livable wage and an incentive are not the same thing. A livable wage is like, hey, I need my basic needs met so I can feel like a sustained human being so that I can do this job. I don't need a bonus check. I don't need like $500. I don't need a pizza party. Please just pay me what I need to live, and then maybe be able to save in the event that I have an emergency. Well, not even maybe, and enough to save in the event that I have an emergency so my life can be taken care of, right? Like, pay me that and I will do this job. But then, in addition to that, please give me the support of bodies. Give the school the resources they need so they can get more bodies, so that the bodies can be there for the smaller bodies so they can grow into bigger bodies. But again, if we're willing to put all this money into for-profit companies and give them all these tax cuts so they can like make millions upon millions, like why are we not investing that same amount of resources into our schools so we can get more people in front of these kids so that the kids can be supported on a daily basis? Classrooms don't need to be 30 kids in a classroom. Honestly, we got more than enough adults in this country for there to be 15 kids in a classroom or 10 kids in a classroom. Make the job more appealing by paying people what they deserve to be paid, and give the schools the resources so they can get more people in the schools so that the kids can learn. But I also feel like, there are certain industries in this country that make money by keeping certain things the way they are. And I think those are the things that are winning the contest. I ain't gonna have that conversation. That's a whole nother podcast.
I don't think we probably could have said it any better ourselves. As we can see, the alarm is still going very strong and not quitting up. I think that's the thing, right? We all strive to be the Feenies of the world, and so it is sometimes a little difficult for us to take a step back and really honestly we sit and we reevaluate, like, is this the right choice? Am I doing what's best for the kids that I'm working with, right? And I think you guys have raised some really amazing points throughout the entirety of the podcast. So Liz and I unmuted her mic, so there's only one of us right now to try to hopefully minimize the sound. But we wanted to say thank you so much for both of you joining our call today. It was really great to have your perspectives and have you on, just so that we had more than just our voices in this conversation. So we really, really appreciate you guys coming. And if you guys have any other final thoughts before you walk away, like anything you'd like to tell the listeners out there, any words of inspiration for people who are experiencing this career shift or change or thinking about it before we kind of head out.
I guess the last thing I would just reiterate, if you're trying to transition, whether it's deeper into education or out of education, make a plan and don't assume that you already know what it is. Be okay with leveraging resources. Be okay with getting that resume consultant. Be okay with reaching out to that career coach. Be okay talking to your friends. You don't have to figure this out on your own. There are definitely different ways that you can approach this process that is honestly kind of overwhelming to some degree. But like, be strategic, write it out, get it out of your head, make a plan, and pray, I guess. That's where I'm at with it.
And just, being sort of early in my career, maybe I'm naive, maybe I am optimistic, but the current state of education, it's only up from here. So, I am an optimist, so I think it is a wonderful time to add our voices to the conversation of education. It's the work, right? Thank you for having us.
Thanks. We appreciate y'all for having us.
It's been really great having both of you on. So anytime either one of you want to pop on, please let us know. We will happily send you a link so you guys can pop in. Hopefully next time the extra fanfare that is occurring here won't be actually happening. But, all right. Thanks, guys.
Thank you. See you later, Chris. Nice meeting you, man. Take care.
Nice to meet you. Bye. How does this work?
So we want to thank everybody for tuning in today for this episode. I know it's been a little bit extra exciting here in the background. With that being said, though, always remember you're not alone on this journey. Utilize the chat, utilize our Instagram, our Facebook. We are a community. We're here to work with each other and be each other's support system for this. Hopefully, me being closer to the mic helps a little bit. With that being said, Liz, it's all you for our closeout.
Thank you so much. Just want to also say that with our podcast, we are going to list some transitional sites, occupation transitional
Possible
sites
employment opportunities.
that
Yeah.
we found on Instagram. So you can look up those sites. There's a lot of trainings and meetings for those teachers who are looking for additional careers. In addition, we're also going to put up some potential employment opportunities. What area can I go into with my skill sets that Brian, Chris, myself, and Andrea have spoken about because you are in education? What is our next episode?
Our lovely next episode is all about strategies for learners, mastering the art of learning. So, how you can create and design curriculum that reaches every single kid in your classroom. And we're really excited to deep dive into that with you guys.
Great. And as always, we are doing our part to stay engaged, ask questions, and stay active. So thank you for participating in today's episode. I'm Liz.
I'm Andrea, and we'll see you in the next one.
Bye.